gather round. Santa Bror is gonna read you a story about how the Grinch stole Christmas. You ready for story time? How the Grinch stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right, or perhaps that his shoes were just a little too tight. But I think that most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was just 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve just hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who boys and girls would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. Oh, then the noise. Oh, the noise, the noise, the noise. That's one thing the Grinch hated. All that noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which is something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together. With Christmas bells ringing, they'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. The more Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop the whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it until now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how? And then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch had a wonderfully awful idea. I know just what to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. He chuckled and chucked. What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I'll be just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then took some red thread and he tied a big horn to the top of his head. Whoa, Max. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh that he hitched up to old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up," and the sleigh started down. towards the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. Sneaky old Grinch. All the windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. "This is stop number one," the old Grinch Claus hissed as he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who's stockings were all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first thing to go. Then he slithered and slunked with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards and tricycles, popcorn and plums. He stuffed them all in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimble, stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Up the chimble. Then he slunk to the icebox. No, not the icebox. And he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding, and he took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove. And he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who got out of her bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking my Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake old Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on the top of this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it back to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here." His fib fooled the child. Then he patted her on the head and he got her a drink and sent her off to bed. When Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went up the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Grinch. The last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. On the walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And one speck of food that was left in the house wasn't crumb even big enough to feed a small mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for even the Who mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a snooze while he packed up his sled. Pack it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsels, the trimmings, and all the trappings. 3,000 feet up to the side of Mount Crumpet. He rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's was his Grinchiest last humming. They're finding out now that Christmas is not coming. They've just woke up. They know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open in a minute or two. Then all the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's the noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. He did hear a sound ringing over the snow. It started in low, and then it started to grow. But the sound was not sad. Why, this sounded quite merry. It couldn't be so, but it was kind of merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, were singing and singing without presents at all. He couldn't stop Christmas from coming. It still came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood and puzzled. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. He puzzled for 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought of before. Maybe Christmas doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, is a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. The minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself was the one who carved the roast beast. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad banana with a greasy black peel. You're a monster, Mr. Grinch. Your heart's an empty hole. Your brain is full of spiders. You've got garlic in your soul, Mr. Grinch. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. You're a vile one, Mr. Grinch. You have termites in your smile. You have all the tender sweetness of a sick crocodile, Mr. Grinch. Given the chance between the two of you, I'd take the seasick crocodile. You're a foul one, Mr. Grinch. You're a nasty, wasty skunk. Your heart is full of unwashed socks. Your soul is full of gunk, Mr. Grinch. The 3 words that describe you are as follows, and I quote, stink, stank, stunk. You're a rotter, Mr. Grinch. You're the king of sinful sots. Your heart is a dead tomato splotched with moldy purple spots, Mr. Grinch. Your soul is an appalling dung heap overflowing with the most disgraceful assortment of deplorable rubbish imaginable, mangled up in knots. You nauseate me, Mr. Grinch, with a nauseous super nos. You're a crooked, dirty jockey, and you drive a crooked horse, Mr. Grinch. You're a double-decker sauerkraut and toadstool sandwich with arsenic sauce. Hey, Bror Fredrik! I'm gonna change. I promise I'll change. Give me a chance, Bror Fredrik. I know I can change. We shall see, Mr. Grinch.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.